Chair will recognize David Kiley. Ask for 3 minutes in support of the bill.
I have handouts.
Welcome to Legislative Administration.
Thank you. You guys want these?
Yes, yeah. What? That's number 5, yes.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
number 5.
If you could introduce yourself and who you represent, and
My name is David Kiley. I represent myself in support of HR25 as one of the people in Part 1, Article 1, exercising my right to give notice and instruction in demand of exact observance to the fundamental principles of our Constitution under Part 1, Article 8, 32, and 38. I'm going to get started. I'm not sure everyone has it in hand yet, but really it's only 10 slides, so it shouldn't take too long. I wanted to go over the affidavit absentee issue, which is centrally germane to much of the resolution. The first slide is affidavit, and I'm just providing the definition of affidavit as it exists in Black's law, which is clear that it's something that it needs to be confirmed by oath, sworn to or affirmed before an officer with authority to administer an oath, or taken before an officer having authority to administer such oath. In 1942, when the amendment was passed for absentee voting, the legislature itself also had similar definitions for what an oath was, and they had safeguards in place requiring that an affidavit with an absentee ballot be sworn. And so there was no question about what an affidavit was. Okay, so if anyone's not clear, that was 1942. And there were several safeguards that were put into place by the legislation at the time of the amendment. And at the time of the amendment is a really important concept for everyone to understand. What did they mean when they passed it? Well, we had statute that actually tells us what they meant. And those safeguards were really designed to make sure that, the Part 1, Article 11, which calls for an equal right to voting, that we didn't have different classes of voters that were similarly situated. So we don't want to have a polling place at a community center where everyone has to go in and every movement is controlled from the point that they're in line to, getting an ID, to a blank ballot, to the privacy booth, all the way through to when they insert it into a machine or put it into a ballot box. Okay, all those movements are controlled by statute, as opposed to the absentee process, which once somebody has a blank ballot, they can do anything they want with it. They can traffic it. They can be electioneered. They can pretty much have somebody else sign it for them because no one's checking. So there's quite a big distinction in the way people are treated. At that 1942, they recognized safeguards needed to be very similar. We just don't have that anymore. In 1979, it was thrown out. So I'm going to move on to, I think I just really said why affidavits are required. So further down in the presentation, I've provided for an RSA that we currently have on the books, 65717. And this is really where we are, telling the voter who has an absentee ballot what they have to do. They have to execute the affidavit, right? In 65930, we have a definition. Statutes have definitions. We have 65930 says that an affidavit must be sworn. Again, going back to just like Black's Law and what existed back in 1942, still currently on the books. We have to execute an affidavit, and we define that it's got to be done, in front of somebody who is qualified to administer an oath. So what happened? 1979. We passed, that's this one right here, it's gray. Okay, 1979, it appears that the legislature decided to cut off the part where the affidavit execution piece is required. And that's why we have this House resolution, okay? How can we possibly swear to something in front of someone who's qualified to administer an oath if it's not on the envelope? So believe it or not, I'm almost done. The 657-7, which is the affidavit envelope, is not an affidavit. It's an affidavit envelope. Legislature cannot just change a label of something and call it an affidavit because they want to. Okay? It's a self-certification. It's meaningless. Okay? I'm going to leave this slide because I think somebody else is going to speak to whether or not legislature can change the intent of the Constitution. So we can skip that. Okay? And I'm going to briefly discuss another element of absentee ballot, the absentee ballot, which is, whether or not the legislature can simply add religious, employment, care of children and the infirmed, or whether as reasons for allowing somebody to have an absentee ballot. We are very explicit in Article 11, Part 1, Article 11. It's absent from the city or town which they are inhabitants. It's clearly a geographical issue. Where you live, if you're not there, you can have an absentee ballot. Or physical disability. That is defined back in 1942 as a doctor, a physician. They have to certify that you're actually physically disabled. When we add things, that's violating a maxim of law. The inclusion of one is to the exclusion of another. A certain designation of one person is an absolute exclusion of all others. Yet the legislature did it. Finally, my final remarks are, and I think it was briefly mentioned, and I agree with the gentleman that spoke before me, where he said that these moderators had uncertified absentee ballot envelopes, and the moderator is only allowed to remove the ballot from the envelope if he can show that it's been certified. None of these have been certified. I don't know how many were national, but I'm thinking statewide, and I'm thinking about prior elections where the rates of absentee balloting went way up. They skyrocketed to like 32%. How many of these have been certified and included in the ballot stream? Think about that. So just in closing, I would appreciate that this committee, if they're going to take up any rebuttals to anything that I put here, which has been submitted already to the record through the website, that you share any dialogue, and especially if you could do it in written format, I'd appreciate it, because I think that no one has been able to rebut any of this information to this point. And thank the Lord for having me here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are you open to taking questions if there are
I am,
any?
yep, sure.
Do we have questions? We have one. Representative McCarter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming here today, sir, to address this House resolution. I understand there's a lot of conflicting opinion on it, but I can clearly see yours. A question for you was something you made me think about with regards to this presentation. It's obviously you've put some time into creating a PowerPoint about this. Have you approached the Secretary of State's office with regards to the information contained in this presentation?
Yeah, actually, I, along with a lot of others, served a lawful notice to the Secretary of State, and he took a meeting with us, and Representative Panic and two other representatives as well. So he's very aware of the issue, and I think he was made aware of the issue before. We just did a lawful notice, and we met with him in early December.
Has he responded in any way or rebutted the information in any regard?
Well, during the meeting, he debated a few of the points, and his response was that he thought he was that he believed that he was acting within the Constitution to the best of his ability. But we did ask him to put it in writing, and he said he could not. And he has been to this point unable to rebut anything we've said. Zero. He's provided, and he in fact sent me a letter saying that he wasn't going to, and I have a copy of that.
What's that? One more, last one.
So he did respond. I just want to make sure I understand what you just stated. He responded to you saying he wasn't going to acknowledge any of this, or what? Can you explain that response a little bit more?
During our meeting, he responded orally to the notice, which we requested written point by point rebuttal. He did not. He responded to my affidavit that I sent to him that, detailed what happened during the meeting, saying that he was not going to take any further action.
Thank you. Any further questions? Rep. Sellers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I'm late to the party. I was at someplace else. But in any case, House resolution that we have before us right now that you're talking to, do you believe this will, if we could get it to pass, will it solve the problem? Or will we have to do something further to resolve this affidavit problem? Because I agree with you, in my town, we went from 50 absentee voters to 500 when COVID hit. And then that was just, to me, it was phenomenal. So I just want your opinion on that.
Well, my opinion is that a resolution is an acknowledgement of the notice that we're providing today. So I think that goes a long way in terms of, starting the process. Do I think it's going to resolve everything? No, I think it's a down payment. But certainly if there are things that can make some of these statutes, which are not, do not come before the Constitution, if they can make them acknowledged, they already are void, in my opinion, because they're repugnant to what the Constitution says. So it's more or less a formality at this point as to how the legislature follows through and makes that, generally accepted amongst the public in themselves. So if we've already gone to the executive branch and, they're ignoring us, the legislature ignores us, and, perhaps I heard mention that, there's a individual rights case on this issue with the Supreme Court. Okay, so that's all three branches of government. If we can't get this resolved, where are we? We're doing everything we can peacefully. All three branches of government are going to ignore it. We can't do that anymore. I'm afraid that there is actually an instruction in the Constitution as to what happens when all three branches of government ignore you. It's not a good result.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.